My guest today is a dear friend, Jaxton Reber. Jaxton's had a wealth of experience in multiple fields and door-to-door. He's sold satellite or direct TV. He's sold pest control, solar. And on top of that, he sold himself. He has multiple real estate deals. We feel lucky to have him on today. He's got a wealth of different management and also just hard work and grit. He's actually going to run a Ironman 3 days after we film this pod. So we feel lucky to have him on, and hope you guys like it. Well, dude, just hopping into it, dude, thanks for being on today.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah. Dude, so, we got introduced through Ridge.
Yeah.
And I love Ridge. He was actually on the pod a couple months ago.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great guy. Nothing but good things to say.
He's just the man. But I just kind of want to give a little intro into you and kind of let everybody know. So Jaxton has a rich history in door-to-door. So Jaxton sold multiple years for a couple of different industries. Started in pest control. And who'd you start with again?
I started with EnviroGuard, but before that, I was actually selling Dish Network and Sprint. So that was my first, get my feet wet in the industry.
And who got you into it?
My uncle, actually. He was starting, anyways, long story, but he was starting a team it was called Dish One at the time.
Yeah.
And he was starting a team down in St. George. I was in high school.
Do people still? I feel TV was hot when I got into. Do people still sold TV? Is there still a huge market for it?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know anyone who has direct TV, except to watch NFL games, NFL Sunday Ticket, whatever.
So who is I think in every kind of sell pest control, solar, there's different demographics of people or areas that you try to hit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with TV. That might be different too. Was there oh, I love running into this kind of hood, or I love running into these kind of people?
I think I was too new to understand what hood I liked.
Oh.
Right? I was in high school, I was playing ball at the time, so I would just go out and knock, and it was awesome to me and it opened my eyes to sales because I would go out and knock for 2 hours, right, in high school and make a couple $100, get a couple sales and be like, oh, this is awesome. I'm gonna go do it again tomorrow. But I don't think I was seasoned enough to know, I like this hood, I don't like this hood. And I was selling in my hometown, which I probably would never do again, door knocking in your hometown.
But. You're just in your backyard, dude, just out slinging deals.
Yeah, exactly. I would knock into people, they would know my dad, which helps, right? Especially when you're in high school. But.
Well, it helps if you're willing to still continue through on it. Some people I knocked down where I'm from, and whenever I'd run into someone that I'd know, I'd be like, oh, I'm just the pizza delivery guy. Sorry, I'm going to the next door.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, dude, you got to start somewhere, and at the time it was good because you're just saving people money, right? And so at the end of the day, it was a pretty easy sell. I feel like to get my feet wet,
So Sprint to satellite, to pest,
yeah,
to solar, and then to pest again.
Yeah.
So walk me through why come back to pest? What were some of the things that you're I like this about it in comparison to what you've done before?
Oh, dude, I love pest control. I think it's funny how every industry has its own bias, right? Like solar has its own bias towards pest control, that it's oh, you don't want to go out and sell solar or sell pests for these reasons, right? And one of the things I like about pest is I honestly I really like the grind of it. I think just the consistency of every day going out and getting deals, where in solar your deals are more spread out, right? And you can be set up really good in solar to where you're getting appointments and everything like that, but especially if you're talking about door knocking, those because in the summer that's what keeps you going, right? Getting deals, having a good day, right? And so the other side of it too is that I feel like it's easier to know if you're getting more sales and you're more consistent, it's also easier to know how you can get better. And it's easier to track, okay, I did this better. I overcame this objection. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I felt like the KPIs were more there to like help people get back. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of like off the top of my head.
Well, and I feel like you can see success a little quicker in pest control. I mean,
Yeah.
I sold solar as well, and I feel like what's nice about pest is you go out and you're like, oh, I got anywhere from 3 to 10 today, or 3 to 14, or whatever it is, wherever you land, and like it's just nice being like, oh, the needle moved. Whereas when I was selling solar, it's like you get a couple a week, or you get 2 week, 1 week, 3 week.
Yeah.
You're like, drinks on me,
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go.
Which again is great money, right? But at the end of the day, it's like you could go a week without. You could still have a great summer, and go a few days without a deal, go a week without a deal, but it's hard to keep that up throughout the summer, right?
Yes.
The other thing I love about pest control is the leaderboard, right?
Yes.
It's just like you get out there every day. You want to be the first one on the leaderboard. You want to be the last one on the leaderboard. Like you're taking a quick lunch because it's just. I really love the culture that a leaderboard, gives. So,
one thing that I've really respected just watching you from afar, or just like seeing like you as you're going out and sell, you're still able to like maintain your health really well. Now I've gone out with a lot of people throughout like like different summers and stuff like that, and typically that's something that like for me went out the door pretty quickly on the first day,
right?
And for other people I saw it go out slowly. But one thing that I like about you is you're still able to like maintain that, sell at a high level, and like keep things like flowing. How are you able to balance those two juggernauts? And do you feel like running, lifting, swimming, all those things like increases your ability to sell, or do you feel like it inhibits it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think. Oh, go ahead.
And on your precursor, like if we feel lucky to have Jaxton here this week because he's running an Ironman at the end of it. So
yeah.
This is a guy that takes his fitness seriously. So I just want to get that precursor.
I
Sorry.
appreciate it.
So.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's once you start to see results and it just becomes like a part of what you do, I feel like it's easy. I think the rarest like human behavior is consistency, right? And like. It's definitely like that. There are days in summer that I wake up and I'm like not excited to get out of bed,
Yeah.
But for me, it's just a consistency of, okay, if I get out of bed, usually I'll lift and then run before the doors. And it makes going to the doors so much easier, right? Because I feel like I've already put myself through a super strenuous workout in the morning. So for me, that helps. I agree though, like industry-wide, it's like there's a big fall off when it comes to working out and doing stuff like that, and I think it just makes it harder. Like for me personally, like having a slow morning or something like that, it kind of just makes the rest of the day drag versus starting off with a win.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered all your questions though. What was it?
No, I like that, and one of the cool things that I like about that too is. I think you need energy from other areas to be a great salesman. I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm just going to just do sales. I'm going to go really hard. But I've found that the best level I've ever operated at in sales is when I was really good at managing like health, like my spirituality, like my relationships. When all of those things are somewhat flowing, I'm keeping them in balance, I found that I was a way better salesman. So it makes sense. And honestly, one of my biggest regrets in my sales career is that I wasn't able to maintain that all the time. Keeping my and I imagine too. I mean, we're talking about getting up and lifting and stuff like that. I imagine your diet has to be pretty on point. Pest control is something that takes a ton of energy, and then prepping and running for an Ironman is a lot. I mean, we're filming this right in September, which is like right off the edge of a summer.
Mm-hmm.
So you've obviously been training all throughout the summer in order to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just wondering, dude, what are you putting in your body to keep all that flowing?
I mean, dude, I could talk about that for days, but I mean, like I eat breakfast and then I'll pack a couple meals, prep them for the day, and take them out and just have them in the car and come back and eat them real quick and then keep working. But I eat a lot of meat. I don't know how much you want to get into it, but like I eat a lot of lean meat, fruit. In the summer, I'll have like rice and sweet potato as well with my meals because it's easier. Just put in a container, take it on the doors.
That's cool.
And for me, I feel like a lot of having a productive morning, like, yeah, it's awesome to go to the gym, like getting some sort of, fitness done, some physical activity in the morning, but also getting up early also gives you that time to meal prep and plan your day, right? When you're getting up an hour before the meeting, then, come lunchtime, you're going to McDonald's and you know what I'm saying? It's like if you fail to plan, you plan to fail type of thing, so.
Well, I also think too, I kind of going back to like starting the day right. Like if you're getting sunlight in the morning, if you're drinking water, if you're eating good, and then also if you also have like 10 or 15 minutes before you have to run into whatever you have to do at the next moment, it helps your mind be like, okay, I know who I am, I know what my purpose is, and we're going to go. I think you also, just like you need to perform high on all these levels, you need to give yourself time in order to step into the next door and show up to everybody the best you can.
Yeah.
And so I like that of like, hey, like a lot of guys will sleep in the whole day and then also, or till like right before this morning meeting and their alarm goes off at like 9 and they're waking up, they're hurrying, they're showering, and then running up and their first thing's the morning meeting. And I think like having other things that feed into you will help you so much show up as a better leader, show up as a better salesman, if you have some level of a recharge rather than everything you were looking on your phone the night before, right before you fell asleep.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's another thing, touching on like the leadership aspect of it, that has helped push me, right? Because when you have guys out, you want to be, waking up before them, working harder than them, right? Like I take it personal to like do all those things. And I feel like anyone who, whether, you bring one rep out that's, your little brother, or you're running a 50-man team, right? It's just like leading from the front and being an example to everyone. Like I feel like that's how you should do it, right? And if you don't have a big team, then it's like fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
Like people will respect what you're doing because it's hard, right? Being consistent is super hard. So
one of the things I think is important about growing or learning is knowing when to walk away from a lot of things. And I think in like, for example, like recruiting, that's been one of my biggest mistakes in recruiting that I've made over the years is learning not when to like walk away from a rep or be like, hey, I just don't think this is for you. Sometimes I put too much energy into people that didn't want to be there or didn't want to like learn or grow.
Right.
And I found that if I put a lot of time and energy to people that do want to be there, all of a sudden, all the middle ground people in the room, they end up going and performing at a really, really high level. For you, has there ever been some moments when you're like, I had to learn that like I was feeding too much into like this negative person, this negative situation? When like was there any learning like, oh, I need to like remove this from my life to achieve a high level goal? I'm sorry.
Yeah, like almost trim fat kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in the best way possible. 100%. One of the things that we did through my time in solar was we would hold, to kind of see like where people are at, we would just hold a leadership meeting every morning, or not every morning, once a week in the morning. And it was open to everyone. So it's like, hey, if you want to come, if you want to be a leader, like if you want to be funneled reps, if you want extra time with me or with whoever, like just be at this meeting, right? And when I was first getting into solar, me and my partner, Brigham Gardner, like we were living...
Shout out Brigham.
Yeah, Brigham's awesome. We were living in St. George. So we were doing blitz trips for solar, right? So we were just recruiting like crazy because, 2021 for solar was a great year. And so we were going out to California, taking people out, taking multiple cars out. We'd go do a blitz trip, then we'd come home, and we would do that every other week, right? But then on our off weeks, we were in St. George. We would drive up early Tuesday morning for like at 4 a.m. to make it to a leadership meeting at like 8, right? And then we would, hang out, spend the rest of the week up here, and then that weekend drive back out to California. And so it's like those little things, those little efforts, like, that's maybe not a little effort. That's probably a big effort, right? Driving 4 hours for a meeting that it's like, oh, we probably could have just like zoomed in or something like that. But that gave us a lot of opportunity from the people we were trying to prove ourselves to as well, right? Mm-hmm. So those little things are things that I look for because you've also seen it too, where a lot of times in sales, people are all talk and they want handouts, right? Yeah. Which, I mean, good for them, right? But obviously, like, that's probably not the way to do it.
Yeah.
And so doing little things like that has helped me kind of like vet people out, because the other thing with sales is like, the more you work, the harder you work, like the more opportunity you're going to be given, right? Because if I have a new rep, I want him to be with the best rep on the best team, right? The highest producing team. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Well, and I feel like opportunity like chases after those that are chasing opportunity. Like, mm-hmm. I don't know why, but I just feel like the universe or something, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times, like, those people are the ones that just get rewarded.
Yeah.
With the bigger, when I think a lot of times people, and maybe this is a better way of saying it, people often I feel like they just find success when they're adding value and not worrying about everything else that's around. Eventually, the opportunity does find you.
Yeah.
So, as far as like, what are some big milestones or big things? Like, I mean, obviously you've led people now and actually I want to back up. Blitzes. That's becoming more popular in pest control. Mm-hmm. We've started to do several spring and fall blitzes. Now, packing up your whole camp and then just going in for a week, I've done it multiple times, but I think a lot of times people go underprepared to those, or they don't have enough things. What are some things that you're like, if you're going to go do a blitz, these are essential to like make sure you have, like a rental car, or like I think a lot of times people think like, oh, I'm just going to mosey out there, and then they don't have a Segway, they don't have like all the different things you need.
Yeah.
What are some things that you're like, this is something you need to plan when you're going on a blitz?
Well, that's key, right? Because if you're going out for a week to 10 days and you're wasting the first 2 days on, like logistical things, right? Like housing and stuff like that, then yeah, obviously that can kill your week. We just had meetings right before where we would have like a blitz planning meeting, where we figured out car groups, we figured out where we're staying, made sure everyone had their training done before and had shirts. I mean, I think that those are kind of the main things, right? And then we just get out there and work. And I think the other thing too is setting expectations. I think that might be the most important thing when you're talking about a blitz, that like you want people to go into it knowing that this isn't a vacation, right? Because in solar, we were going to California, in pest control, you're going
to the beach.
Yeah, exactly. So we had to be super strict on expectations. Obviously, pest control, a lot of the markets aren't, downtown LA, right? So, but I would say that was our biggest thing, is just making sure that we're prepared going into the trip, that guys, that they had their training done, everything like that.
One thing that you brought up a couple of times is the importance of meetings. And I think meetings are so, so important. And when I started out, I think I suffered from a little bit of like, why do I need to go to the meeting? I'm selling well. I'm fine. I don't need to go to the meeting. But what I've learned as I've grown older, or as I've continued to sell, your team is going to dictate how well you do. So if the entire team is selling at a higher level, you're just naturally going to sell at a higher level. So by going to the meeting, you're helping everyone kind of grow and learn and increase, which that increases your daily competition that you see on the leaderboard. That also helps them reach new levels and get to new heights faster, which in turn helps you get to those new heights. So I think a lot of times new managers don't understand the importance of meetings, but the reason you do the meeting isn't for you, and it isn't even for another person. It's so the entire team can grow, and by so doing, that will happen.
So are you talking about summer or off-season meetings?
Any kind of meeting. I think like summer meetings and off-season. I think both of them are important, to just be in a room with a bunch of people to kind of be like, hey, like, this is our plan, this is our strategy, and this is how we're going to grow.
Yeah. And I kind of have a love-hate relationship with meetings in the off-season, especially. Like during season, when you're in the summer, I think for me, the strength of meetings is accountability, right? Like having a leaderboard, or, looking at the leaderboard on PestArts or whatever it might be. That's like the biggest thing, right? Like, especially rookies, like you do not want to say that you bageled in the meeting, right? I mean, I guess you could have two cultures. Like if you start to like let it go and it's like, oh yeah, bagels are okay. Like obviously you don't want that culture, right? But yeah, it just holds people accountable. But then in the off season, there is a fine line between like, okay, let's plan in the office. Let's hold ourselves accountable to KPIs, whether in the off season it's recruiting. Nice thing about blitzes is you're always recruiting for another blitz, right?
Yeah.
Then the other side of it is like you can only do so much in the office, so go sell, right? It's like you can only be so productive in the office. You know, you make a plan, go execute on it. So that's always been like one of the big things for me is like you can move the needle along, you can recruit in the office, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like you have to be going out and selling, doing the blitz trips. Like if you spend the whole off season just sitting in the office, like, yeah, you can recruit, but go sell.
Well, and the reality too is like I feel like this industry used to be a summer thing. I feel like more and more it's not that. I feel like people are venturing out more throughout different parts of the year. More and more, like I know not many people are even going to school as much. I see more and more kids, especially around the community where we're at, you doing it more full time. And so I think in order to stay successful or stay towards the top, you have to be willing to commit a little more time, a little more energy to make that happen. So, who are some figures for you that have like really inspired you throughout your career? Like, whether it was like someone in your office, a celebrity, or someone that like maybe you like read or learned about. What are some things that you're like, hey, this has really impacted my door-to-door career, but I maybe got it from somewhere else or somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously I love listening to podcasts. Like I've been, I just try to like make, who said it? I think it was, I can't remember who said it, but they said you know who it was? I think it was Brian Tracy. What was his book?
Good quotes.
What was his book?
Psychology of Selling.
Was it Psychology of Selling?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's the one that talked about like make your car a library on wheels.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so I think that's great, right? Because podcasts are interesting. Like it's interesting how much you can feel like you develop a relationship with some random like, you know, high profile famous person that's talking to you, right? But they're just like, I mean, they're giving you all the information that they have. They're giving you all their knowledge, right? Yes. Which is so cool. And just to hear them riff on different topics and how they made it and different things that you can put into practice. So, I mean, I love a bunch of different podcasts, like, you know, just classic, like Ed Milet's really good. You know, I love his stuff. He was obviously a big salesman. And then books like Psychology of Selling. Another big one for me my first year in sales was, it was Grant Cardone's book.
Yeah, if you're listening, you don't have Psychology of Selling, you need to get that one.
Yeah.
10X or Sell or Be Sold?
Yeah, Sell or Be Sold, that one. Yeah, dude. I mean, that was like my first summer. That was the turning point. That book helped me make a turning point, and just like I felt like, you know, for first year rep, just average going from, you know, 2 to 4 deals a day to like getting past that hump. So those are two books that I feel like were crucial for me. And then just listening to podcasts and you know, just keeping up on the industry as a whole and staying competitive with people from other companies, the leaderboard, like taking it personal, you know?
Yeah. So everyone's had their hero's journey. I feel like in any summer, if you go out and do one or whatever, there's moments where you feel invincible and there's moments when it's like some walls or some tough.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any times maybe in your history where you're like, dude, this was a really dark moment, but I figured it out, picked up the pieces, and we got out of it? And what did you learn from that?
Yes, there definitely was, but for me, focusing on the input more than the output, it just brings me so much more like, I guess, like peace and joy. Like, not to sound like corny, but you know, you can, if you end the day feeling the same when you sell 10 as when you sell 3, it's like, well, I went out, I knocked the hours. Like in my mind, it's like, okay, I have a relationship with the doors. I have to be on the doors from this hour to this hour. And as long as I do that and I'm working hard, like you just have to be okay with the output, right? And so for me, that's what I try to focus on. And yeah, just focusing on my input and the effort, right?
One thing that I love about that is it's just I I've noticed that the highest performing sales reps are the ones that when they do have the bad day, they don't freak out. They don't come apart. They don't start like transferring negative energy to like another rep or another person. They kind of like figure out a way to just be like, okay, I'm gonna just control my controllables. I'm gonna figure out my routine, get back into it, and then they go out and then have a big day the next day. One of the worst things you can do, and I read a book, what's it called, The Fearless Mind. I think his name's Craig Manning, but he's a tennis coach that was he was at BYU, and he also helped like LeBron James and several other athletes throughout his tenure as a sports psychologist. But he talks about how like getting too lost in the result or too lost in like something that's like outside of your direct control in the moment will prevent you from actually being able to achieve that thing.
Yeah.
So you have to get really good or discipline your mind when things do go wrong to just zero back in. What are the things I can control? How can I keep my energy towards them and not losing your mind on the result or the outcome and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, dude, you're knocking doors, right? So it's like, so if you have a bad day, you know, I feel like, you know, just brush it off and keep going. But think about how many bad doors. Like, you're going to have majority probably of bad doors.
Yeah.
So if you can get past bad doors, you can get past bad days, I feel like. One of my favorite quotes, his name is Lee Liu. He was like a big investor with Warren Buffett and everything. And he said that self-pity has no utility. And it doesn't, right? It's like, how does it benefit you to like throw yourself a pity party, you know? Whether that's at the end of a bad day or whether it's halfway through the day and you're bageling by lunch, right? But I think a lot of selling is just stacking little wins. Like, for example, let's say you're out selling and you're bageling at lunch. And obviously you're stressed, right? If you're bageling at lunch. But if you can know in the back of your head, oh, dude, like this last week, like I sold 6 in prime time. So I can, you know, I'm fine. Like I'll go out and I know that most people are now just getting home. So I'm just going to rip the rest of the day. So if you've done that before, then you can go back to those experiences that just help you basically reassure yourself that like, dude, everything's okay. I've been working. It's just a numbers game. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And just get through it.
Well, and what's interesting about that, those people that do call midday, because I get those calls all the time, where they forecast how the rest of the day is going to go.
Right.
And what's interesting is those people that choose to forecast negatively, like most of the time, like they're right. It ends up being negative. But the ones that just are like, shoot, dude, it's 6. I don't have any sales. We're going to keep going. Love you, man.
Right.
Got to keep you on the doors. All of a sudden they come home with like the end top of the board.
Yeah.
And those people, like, they just allow the waters to pull out fish whenever they need to. I just think having a mindset like that is so crucial.
Yeah. And if you're, you know, again, going back to like if you're leading a team, you know, and you're a high performer and you have a bad day, like a lot of what you might be thinking is from the outside in, right? Like, oh, what's everyone thinking about me, right? But it just helps people understand that you're human too. You know, it probably helps them relate with you more. Then you go out and crush it the next day.
I love it. I guess kind of shifting gears, what are some things, I mean, obviously you've sold for a while. Investing is a big thing that that you've gotten into. I've talked to you about off air a couple times. What are some things that you think though for like a first year guy that it's like, hey, this would be great to like put some cash into, or this is like a great beginning vehicle to kind of help you get off the ground and get going?
Yeah, don't buy a new car your first year.
Yeah, don't make the dumb mistakes. That's great.
Like, no, seriously though. Like, I think it's just crazy how many people, you know, make X amount of money in their first summer, which obviously is probably more money than they've ever made before, which is awesome. But then they go blow it on something stupid, and by the end of the year, they have to go out and do sales again, right? So, at least in my mind, I don't want sales. I want sales to be more of a launch pad, especially door-to-door sales. I want it to be like a launch pad for my life instead of me being slave to it and being like handcuffed to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like they call it the golden handcuffs, right? But it's not golden handcuffs if, you know, you spend 5 years, you get really good at it, 10 years, whatever it is, you make plenty of money and put it in the right places. So yeah, that's like the first advice. Don't go out and buy a new car, right? As much as you want to flex that you made, like, you know, whatever you made, I think the bigger flex is like, assets, right?
Yeah.
So for me, yeah, I love real estate. I bought my first piece of real estate. It was a fourplex in Idaho. Let's see, that would have been, it's actually it was my second year in solar, so it was my third year in sales.
That's awesome.
So.
Well, and a fourplex, that's the one that everyone wants to jump into when they're starting. That's awesome. You got like my first one was a townhome.
Yeah.
And like a fourplex would have been like way cooler. I mean, you're pulling in several different streams of income, and like there's never a greater feeling than walking. Like it's kind of like getting your first car when you walk into your first property and you're like, this is mine. Like you start touching the walls.
Yeah.
If I could have that feeling again, I'd kill for that feeling.
Yeah, no, 100%. But yeah, I would say real estate 100%. And like just getting into it, anything new is going to be scary, right? And there is some risk involved. You have to know what you're doing. I spent, from the time I got home from my mission to buy my first property, was probably 2 years that I spent like just looking at properties, learning about real estate, like just pretty much being obsessed with it. And then I got my first property, and dude, I still like learned a ton of stuff like that you really only learn by immersion, right?
Yes.
I was, I'll give you a quick story, but I had just closed on it. I was all excited, right? Everything was going great, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to start buying more. So I was at a Grant Cardone conference because I'm like, dude, I want to learn more about multifamily, doing bigger deals, which actually at this conference is where I found my next property. But this was probably 2 weeks after I bought my first one, and I'm in the conference. I get a call. It's like, hey, your water heater broke. Like, It's just like coming through the ceiling and everything. And so I'm like, dang, that sucks. So I'm like stressed out. I'm in Arizona. The property's in Idaho. And just trying to figure out things along the way. Luckily, most of that got covered by insurance. But, dude, you just learn how to deal with these things. And I remember hearing people who just had these horror stories with real estate. And I was like, man, do I really want to get into this, just because everything that I've heard, crazy tenants or water heaters breaking, there's a lot more that goes on than just money in your mailbox every month, right? But, dude, you just learn and you just grow. And, yeah, was my first investment the best investment? I mean, no. Was it great? Yeah, but is it going to be my best one? Probably not. Like, it just keeps getting better, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. And learning to start is so important. So many people want to sit back and learn in the way that they have learned previously. And the thing is, every new area you go into in life, and I talked about this a while back with a friend, but every new arena you jump into, there's a new level of learning that needs to go on. You can't just drag what you brought from the old one. You have to think creatively, think different, ask around. And by doing all of those things, it expands you and helps you grow way more.
Yeah. And touching on, I know I mentioned Ed Milet in his podcast. So one thing that I love, and I think, honestly, I don't know where this comes from. I think it's a mindset, but I don't know if it comes from childhood and how your parents were or what it really is. But he talks about how he would rather have more money in his bank account. Like, that's where he gets his self-esteem from, is money in his bank account, which it's like, you're not walking around telling people how much money you have in the bank, right? It's like nobody ever knows, but to you, it brings you that peace of mind, right?
Yeah.
And he says that he would rather have more money in his bank account, and he values that more than driving a new nice car, right? When he was getting into sales, now he has whatever he wants, right? But when he was getting into sales, he had that mindset of, okay, I'm just gonna build up my bank account, and that's where I'm gonna get my wins from. When you PR in your bank account, you know what I'm saying?
Well, and things like that, gamifying it is so important because it keeps it fun when you have to do tough things.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so I think just that mindset of the money that you make in sales, have it work for you and actually pay yourself first, right? A lot of people, they'll take the money that they made and then they'll go try to, they'll buy stuff to show off to other people. But I think if you can internally think, okay, is this actually making me that much more happy? Because dude, in 10 years, you would be way happier having 10 properties or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Well,
not to say that you can't do both, right? There's going to come a time that, you can afford to get a nicer car. I'm not saying drive a beater for your whole life, but just making sure that you're investing in doing those things first.
Well, I just think it comes down to understanding the things that matter the most last the longest.
Yeah.
And having that mindset on finances with homes and cars, but also then again with like if you're recruiting with reps and relationships and individuals, like those are things that last a lot longer than a lot of times. I've seen people lose recruits or other things due to like a small tiff of. I once saw a couple like a guy lose a rep over like $100 dispute on something, and I think it's crazy because
You're like, I'll cover that.
yeah,
Dude.
I was like, there's such a learning curve on that you're like, dude, you don't want to trip over you don't want to trip over dollars trying to pick up dimes.
Right.
And so I just think it's really important to kind of have that in the back of your head. But Jaxton, kind of in closing, what's one thing? I mean, you have multiple years now in the space. What's something you would tell somebody that's like, let's say I'm year 3, kind of been in it for a second. I think there's a lot of people that like are on the edge of like, hey, do I want to dip in and like go more full speed on this, or like I don't know, like what would you say to a year 3 guy that's kind of like on the fence, or like what they need to do to kind of like get their mind right to have success?
I think it depends a lot on the person. There's been, and I think with sales I think sales is like the epitome of the grass is greener, right? Like so many people think like, especially when you're out in the summer, they're like, dude, I would rather be, just doing a desk job like back in Utah,
Yeah.
And I have buddies who have done that, and then they do it and they look back and they're like, well, I was making a lot of money. Yeah, it was kind of hard. Yeah, I was out of town all the time, but like, so if you're just able to keep stacking those wins, stacking year over year, where hopefully you're making a little bit more money, hopefully you're growing a team, right? And then you're able to invest and diversify and then just keep growing in sales. I mean, I think ideally you should have some sort of, depends on, again, it just depends like on the person, right? Because some people are really good, they just sell by themselves. Some people build teams. So like the end goal is different. But the nice thing about sales is like you can do sales and school, and you can go pretty much all in on both of them, and you can get school done, and then you can say, okay, I'm going to do sales until I graduate school, and then I'm going to look at my job opportunities versus sales, and I'm just going to choose then.
Yeah.
Right? I think that one of the routes that a lot of people go is, oh, I made X amount my first year, I'm just going to drop out of school, and then I'm not going to do much, but I'm going to do sales, and I'm going to make enough money, right? Where it's like, well, if you have extra time, you might as well graduate. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
Don't do less just to do sales. You know what I'm saying?
100%. And I think I viewed both school and the like summer sales as like it was Hogwarts for me. Like that was like all the learning and the growing. Like those 4 years, like when I got home from my mission, I'm like, these next 4 years are just, I'm going to fully immerse myself, try to learn the best that I can. And I think viewing it as more of like, it's a great place to grow yourself, both camps, both school and also each summer. I think it's a way healthier mindset than feeling like, I think a lot of times people get this mindset that like, oh, summer sales is real life and school is fake life. And I think both of them are real life because at the end of the day, we're all going to die like in 60, 70, or however many years anyway. So just viewing it as real life and then moving forward with the attitude that like you are growing and learning in each of them.
Yeah. Like if somebody came to me, which has happened, and they were worried about whether I should go to school or not, like if you have time, do it. And if you're worried, if you're not want to go to school because you don't see any return on your time in school, it's like, well then like recruit, network, right? And at the end of the day, like if you want to drop out, like be my guest, right? But I think that, a lot of times we can do a lot more than we think. And yeah, I think one of the traps that people fall into is just working in the summer and hanging out in the off season, because working hard in the summer does grant you that luxury, right? But at the same time, you could be looking at investments. You could be, going to school, doing a lot more with your time. So that's to say about that.
Well, you won't be happy very long if you're not growing.
Yeah.
And you need to grow in the summer. You need to grow in the off season.
Yeah, that's why both trips are around.
Yeah.
You know? You get out there and work, grow your team, all that.
100%. Okay, well, in closing, to kind of wrap up the pod, I want to ask you who's someone in your sales career that was kind of your Mr. Miyagi, your sensei, or who you're like, man, they really took my game to the next level, and what were some things that you'd pay a tribute to them that like still affect you today?
Dude, Sam Taggart, man. No, I was kidding. No, for me, like I think it would be outside of sales. Honestly, I think it would be my dad, right? Like growing up, my dad, he's a doctor, so he'll go to the gym like super early in the morning, and he would always expect us to go to the gym with him, but he wouldn't wake us up. So he's like, hey, you guys, because we wanted to go, we wanted to. This is when I was whatever, like 6th grade or something. We're like, hey, we want to get into the gym. He's like, hey, you can come with me. You have to wake up at 5:30. You have to get up by yourself, and you have to be upstairs before I leave, type of thing, right? So just little things like that. He ingrained that consistency in me from like a super early age, and I've seen him be successful in his career, and so that's something that pushes me. Even though I know what you're asking is like, who's someone that I've learned like super hard sales skills from, right? But at the end of the day, like that drive to want to be like great at what I do, and the consistency to, I guess constantly do it, constantly focus on the input instead of the output. I feel like that's what's gotten me to where I am today.
I love it. Well, and I like that angle because summer sales is so much deeper than just sales and psychology. There's the bigger skill or the harder ones, like you're talking about right there, of like having the self-discipline when you're like 6 or 7 to be like, hey, Dad, I want to come to the gym. and waking up early.
Well, sixth grade. I wasn't in the gym at 6. I wish, bro.
Dude, I'm like, let's go Swolger, dude. At kindergarten, you're just shoving over some kids. And
dude, I wish, bro. That'd be awesome.
Well, dude, Jaxton, thanks so much for being on, dude.
Of course.
Fun learning with you. But yeah, dude, thanks, and over and out.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.